We are live for the first day of the first Family Business Life 9-day transformation challenge. It's 6:30 a.m. Central Time, and Leo is full of energy. That's a part of the challenge that you're coming in at this time of the morning full of expectation, full of desire. I got a mute down over here. Got stuff over here. This is exciting. This is exciting. See, that's what happened when you're having too much fun. You have devices everywhere. All right. So, got that out of the way. Oh my goodness. Look, we got Saul and Vanessa Delgado. Hey, they're going to be in on Mastermind experience for one of the days coming up. So, hey, glad to have you guys. Listen, listen, listen. A part of this challenge, everything about this challenge, everything about this transformation challenge is designed to take you and me to the next level. Okay. And so here's how you want to look at it. Leo, why would we be at 6:30 a.m. Central Standard Time? It's because it's a challenge. Why would we do a 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time during lunchtime? Why? That's lunchtime. That's the point. It's a challenge. It's challenging you to do something that you haven't done in order to transform you to do something that you want to do. Oh my goodness, this is exciting. So, here's what you can expect today in this morning mastermind experience. You can expect value first and foremost. You can expect commitment from us. We're here. We're going to bring you the heat. We're going to bring you the commitment. But here's what you can also expect. You can expect to be engaged. Like, you go ahead and hit into that chat and say, hey, I'm loving this. This is awesome. That touched me. That made a difference. Let's make sure we're connecting, because here we are to challenge one another, but not just a challenge. It is for the purpose of transformation. So, before I bring on our first guest, I just want to say I want to appreciate him and his company, Awareness Elevation, for partnering with us, Team 3L, Leo Simpson Executive, everybody else who are part of this for this particular 9-day transformation challenge. Awareness Elevation is going to be bringing so much value to you guys on the back end, providing some options, some opportunities, and things of that nature. And when you're in a position to where you can connect with people who are like-minded, who desire to add value in the same way that you add, it fuels you. So just know I'm excited about what it is that you all are going to be able to access. Now, listen, listen, listen. You got to be a part of this whole thing in order to get to the backside and get you some of this goodness. So let's get off of all this other stuff and get into really what you came here for, which is to experience some challenge that would bring you transformation. So let me bring in my guest, James Pyle, one of the main folks regarding what? Awareness elevation. What's up, James?
Hey, what's happening? Good morning, Leo. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Good morning, man. So tell me this. I gotta ask you because I know you were fired up yesterday. Did you actually get some sleep last night?
I mean, I did. I think a little bit, but whatever sleep there was in there is it came off with that 4:45 a.m. ice cold shower for 2 minutes this morning.
Oh man,
Yeah,
immersion and submersion. Oh my
right.
goodness.
Elective.
So man, listen, before we jump into the conversation, just kind of give us some introduction, but also just some things that you think that you have on your mind right now, more so to really bring some value to this family business life 9-day transformation challenge.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. So first and foremost, I just want to thank you, and also just excited to be a part of this opportunity to help encourage others in transforming themselves. Because as the old saying goes in life, nothing changes unless nothing changes, or
Yeah,
until
yeah,
something changes, right? And so something you were talking about in there that I just wanted to share a context with everybody that's tuning in, as well as people that are going to be watching the replay, is to give all of us the same lens to look through for this next hour for a conversation, or at least a similar lens to see through. And so I want to start by sharing what it is that we do at Awareness Elevation. So we do champion leadership training and certified high performance coaching. And just so that we can all have that same context, high performance is defined as success above and beyond standard norms over the long term without sacrificing well-being or positive relationships. Because we've all seen people who do what's called peak performance, where they shoot up to a peak and they achieve a certain type of success or result, but it's at the cost of usually their well-being in one fashion or another,
Yeah.
and or positive relationships. And so what we specialize in is actually using the only science-backed high performance-based framework in the world to be able to lead clients to higher levels of performance consistency over the long haul without making those sacrifices.
Awesome.
And really, that's so important, because how we do anything is how we do everything in life. There are these universal truths. And really, like you were talking about this morning, it's early for you. I'm mountain time. It's 5:34. I live on the West Coast, so it would have been 4:30 for me. But really, you made a mention of something a moment ago, and that is that you have a lot of energy this morning. And I'd actually like to suggest that it's maybe not even that you have a lot of energy this morning or whatever your words were, but it's actually you're choosing to generate more
Mm.
energy, because we don't actually have energy. We generate energy. That's the way
Mm.
beings work. And so I just wanted to share that self-awareness moment with everyone, that you made a conscious choice, just like everyone else did, to raise your energy to this morning so that you could be up for this call, that you could be on this call. I did. I mean, just a moment ago before we got on, you saw me doing breath of fire, where I was
Yeah.
breathing
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
really rapidly in and out of my
Yeah.
nostril. And it kind of looks like, what is this good person going to do? Pass out on me? But, in order to change our state, we have to change our physiology. And it's impossible to have low vibration thoughts when the body is in a peak state. So
Mm.
that's why you heard me mention something like that. I like to do breath work, cold showers, these different things,
Yeah.
because it actually primes a state for me.
Man, so one of the things that you said, James, and I think it's time to get into the conversation. It was where I said, I have a lot of energy this morning. And you said, hey, you're generating a lot of energy. What you did right there was challenged what I thought to transform what I think. And I think going forward, right?
Mhm.
And so when it comes to family, business, life, mastery, when it comes to being able to experience challenge and transformation with family life and business life and all those different things, the thought process is you've got to know what you believe and whether what you believe is really of value and benefit in order to know if you're going to get something out of it. Okay. Now let me get back to the high performance piece in this as well. So you said peak performance is you get to a certain point, that's pretty much it's the ceiling, right? But high performance is that it's well above what you've done in the past, right? Like, is that a way to kind of look at it?
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, with regard to family life and business life, now let me make sure I set this up. We're going to talk about this in the lunch and learn sessions, but work-life balance is impossible because balance of work and life is never achievable simply because work and life are essentially synonymous, first and foremost. And since they're essentially synonymous, you can't balance them because you really can't separate them and put them on different sides for them to be able to be in a position to where they can balance. It's really going to be like a circle on this side that they're just rolling over, on this side they're just rolling back and forth. And so when it comes down to it, the truth of the matter is that there is a right view we need to have about family life and business life in order to achieve mastery in family, business, life. So let's talk about high performance. Let's talk about challenging what we think about family life and business life. And listen to me carefully. When I say family life, I'm not just talking about marriage. I'm not just talking about parenting. I'm talking about all the aspects: being a son, being a cousin, being a nephew, being a grandson. Like high performance in regard to both family life and business life in such a way that you know you can achieve every time predictably. Talk about that.
Yeah. So really what this comes down to is, another universal truth in life. And that is that we don't get out of life what we want. We get out of life who we are. And so oftentimes because of the, let's just call it, programming of the Western world, or at least here in America, so many of us are never even provided an opportunity to understand who we really are in our identity. And I always share with people, when you know who you are, you know why you're here. And when you know why you're here, you know what to do. And so many people talk about finding happiness or your passions or all this sort of stuff. And that's why I like to encourage people in pressing into their purpose, because when you understand your purpose, which comes from knowing your true identity, then you know what to do. You know why you're here and you know what to do. And that will fuel your passions. And you will get really passionate about fulfilling and maximizing your purpose. Right.
Mm,
And so, really, this comes down to, though, is the statement I made earlier of how we do anything is how we do everything. Because so many of us are thinking that we're going to like have family life be this compartmentalized thing, along with business life being this compartmentalized thing, along with all these other things in our life that we attempt to compartmentalize. But the fact of the matter is again, how we do anything is how we do everything. So if we're coming up short in either family life or business life, by default, that's the case in every other area of our life as well.
mm,
And that's the
mm,
point of self-awareness. And that's why we actually call self-awareness step zero. Because so many people, even with high performance, high performance is really based around a set of some mindsets and habits and principles that help people achieve this. So it's those moment to moment decisions that we're making throughout each day, all day long,
mm,
right? And so, really, what we have to look at here is that if we want to achieve greater success in life, if we want to achieve greater success in our family, if we want to achieve greater success in our business, we need to come away from what do we need to do, and we need to look at who do I need to be? Who must
mm,
I become? And really, I believe when we talk about purpose in life, everybody's purpose in life is to find a cure to our own pain and then give that cure away to the rest of the world. It's
mm,
literally become the person that you admire most and then be that role model for everybody else, right? So
mm,
that's really where the high performance coaching component comes in, is that it's a structured framework and scientifically proven system that anybody, it doesn't matter if you're a high performer or not, because that's oftentimes what we hear is, well, you're a high performance coach. I don't feel like I'm a high performing individual. I don't think this would be for me. Well,
yeah.
it actually might be perfect for a person like that. The reason being is because it's a set of mindsets, habits, and principles that if anybody practices them consistently, they will become a high performer. They will
Mm,
achieve success above and beyond standard norm over the long term without sacrificing well-being or positive relationships. And to
mm,
jump back a moment to like that peak performance model I mentioned before, because I used to understand and interpret things as peak performance as well, until I had gotten into high performance for several years and then became a certified coach. The problem with peak performance is that whenever there's a peak, the next thing after a peak is a valley, right? So by its nature, in the definition of and description of it, it's actually a cyclical process, right?
yes.
Versus continual ascension and then attaining that, like being able to maintain what you've attained in terms of success. Because how many of us have seen people who have shot up and become successful and then crashed and burned? I mean, for people like us, we could throw it back to things like a one-hit wonder, right? Like somebody
Mm,
like a Vanilla Ice or something, right? Like he came out peak performance and then boom, crashed and burned, right? Versus a musician who's been able to come out and
man,
hit
you
the
are
top of the game
hitting
over
some
the long haul.
stuff. You are
Yes.
hitting some stuff. So let me introduce this phrase and concept that I often share. I mean, people ask Leo, "Hey Leo, what do you do?" First thing is I help CEOs, business owners, and executives to eliminate the, sometimes I say pervasive problem, because it is, of family life crashing and burning while business life is thriving and vibing. Now watch this. based on what you're saying, when especially when you're thinking about family life and business life from the context of work life, right? What's happening is people are saying business life is work and family life is life. When it's all life. You're just giving a description to it based on the context of life. So if you say work life, you're really not only saying work and life, which are essentially synonymous, but you're only saying work life is one area of your life and you're trying to balance one area of your life. Doesn't make sense, right? So that's why you can see those peaks and then those valleys, those peaks and those valleys. What you're basically saying is consistent with this thought process of eliminating family life crashing and burning and achieving mastery of family business life to where there's a construct of them having a unification and an alignment. Here's what happens is that you get to live at the level of high performance when you achieve mastery in family business life, not because you've mastered it, but you've become the person who continues to seek that high performance all the time, regardless of where you are. Is that what you're saying to me?
Yeah, it's definitely in line with that. And something to keep in mind as well is that it's really about doing your best each and every day. And that's going to look different from day to day.
Yeah.
But what matters is that consistent persistence of effort of practicing these habits and mindsets daily, which will build that long game. And oftentimes, I mean, I know that I've, struggled with this at times, even being a kind of person who's been like a, 10-year overnight success, if you will, previously in my life. And so many of us want success to come so quickly.
Yeah.
And really, when we can come away from a timeline or an attachment to things, and we can just focus on developing ourselves to be the person that we were created to be, but that can only happen when we know who we are, right? And so many people don't know who they are, because here, especially in America, in Western countries, one of the first things that people think, or when we meet somebody new, we ask them and we identify or classify them about, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Is we ask them about their career. It's like, who are you? It's like, oh, well, hey, I'm James Pyle. I'm a leadership consultant and certified high performance coach. Well, that's what you do, but that's not who you are, right? And so my point is that really where we start off with self-awareness is helping people become aware of, who am I? And something that I think will resonate with you, I got a download last night.
Come on.
You ready for it?
Come on.
I am, when people say, James, who are you? I am who I am says I am, right? Now, that could be interpreted a lot of different ways, and I know you can see between the lines in there, right? But when people ask me, who are you? Well, I am who I am says I am.
Oh, man.
However, so many of us, each and every day, people wake up and they literally hand these tech companies their brain and tell them, hey, program my emotions and my neurochemistry to be so jacked up. Here, let me hand you my life by looking at these social media apps, right? And people don't realize, like we talk about inflammation. Inflammation is the cause of aging and the cause of every kind of disease in the world, okay? Well, a lot of people aren't realizing is inflammation comes from thoughts.
Yeah.
It comes from trauma, and it comes from toxins, right? So the fact of the matter is that a lot of people are even aware of the toxins they're ingesting. But one of the most toxic areas of inflammation is what? It's thinking, right? And so that's that self-awareness component of becoming aware of that internal dialogue. The most important conversation any of us will ever have in our entire life is what? It's the conversation with self, right? And I always tell people, I'm like, hey, look, you might as well take it easy on you, because the rest of the world probably isn't going to. You know what I'm saying? So like that's really what it is, right? Like, you better go easy on you, right? Yeah. So
Man, Larry just regurgitated what you said about I am who I am says I am. He's like, brilliant, right? And so one of the things that's interesting about that, when you said that, I thought about this song that I sing with our praise group at our church. And in one of the songs, it says, I am who I am because the I am tells me who I am, right? And so what you just said, it was like, yeah, Larry, that is brilliant. I mean, it's a very powerful combination. And so I want to take it a little deeper with regard to who I am says I am, but in the context of family life and business life. Let me set it up for you. So there's a phrase, and this has kind of been the punch phrase, the premier phrase that I've been, man, I have this thing, James, with saying 2 or 3 words at one time. My brain be going this way, like this. And it's like I be wanting to say all of them at once. So I have to slow down. So the punch phrase, the power packed perspective that's kind of been at the I guess you say umbrella level of this challenge and all that we've been sharing and promoting it has been the thought process. I just muted myself on accident. Family life and business life are meant to be teammates, not opponents. Okay. I'm going to say it again just because I want it to resonate with us. Family life and business life are meant to be teammates, not opponents. Now, think about it from this standpoint. Consider that family life has an identity, for it does, and the same with business life. And they're not designed to be opponents in the sense that they are working against each other. Of course, that's obvious, but more so, they are intended to be teammates in the sense that we deal with them in everyday life regardless, in the sense that they do in some way give value to each other, but we don't actually have a true mindfulness about that. Most people won't even say that statement in that way. And so what I want to throw back to you is this thought process of, in regard to high performance, in regard to having the mindfulness that one should have with regard to high performance in family life and high performance in business life, such that it becomes family business life mastery. How does a high performance thought process, as well as self awareness, influence how we pursue that thought process of family life and business life actually being teammates who work together?
Yeah, this is a great question. So, the way that I like to share this with people is, the way that I've come to understand life and the way humans experience life is it's all about association,
Okay.
right? We associate everything we see, hear, feel, interpret, or experience in a day based on our association and usually from the past, right? And so, really, touching in on this, a couple of different things. Okay. There you go. I love this. Larry's talking about, yeah, teammates, not opponents. Exactly. How we do anything is how we do everything. And even though, like you said, there is an identity in work and an identity in family life, really, it's all tied into a person's own core central identity.
Mm.
Right. And something that I call, or have come to know and understand, is conscious congruence. Because
Ooh.
when we are in alignment in our
Y'all
act,
put that in the chat.
yeah,
Conscious congruence.
yeah, conscious congruence. When our thoughts and actions are in alignment with our highest calling, our higher self, right? That's, we hear a lot of people talk about, be your best self, be your higher self, all these sort of things. Well, what that is that's when we're actually living our purpose. That's when our thoughts and our actions are in alignment with our higher
Mm.
consciousness and higher conscience telling us how to be who we were created to be. Something that's interesting, though, that I had skipped over on accident in the beginning to share with people, and I
Talk
love
about
to
it.
share it, especially in regard to what we're talking about here with family and business life mastery.
Mm.
And that is that I meet parents all the time and people who have families, and they say, you know what, I would do anything for my family. In fact, I would even
Oh
die
yeah.
for my family, right?
Yeah.
And what an honorable thing to say. The thing is, though, is I always like to ask people, how many of you would actually live for your family, though? Because you're basically sleepwalking through life dead. I mean,
Yeah.
there's an old quote, I'm trying to remember who it is, like basically people die at 25 and then we don't bury them till 75 or something like that, right? Like,
Ooh.
how many people are walking through life saying, I would die for my family, when really you're kind of dead to your family already, right?
Mm.
So, how many of us would actually come alive and come fully alive and be committed to becoming a better version of ourselves each and every day and transforming? You talk about transformation. That's what this challenge is, transforming into the next best version of self at every stage of life. That's why our company logo is a caterpillar to a butterfly, because that's actually a metamorphosis. That's a form of transformation process. And the reason I like to share that with people is because in North America, in Canada, British Columbia, a caterpillar will live on the same plant for its entire life. It will hardly leave that plant. But when it transforms and it becomes a butterfly, basically the activation of the power that's within all of us to be our highest consciousness and best self, then it will actually fly from British Columbia all the way down to Baja, Mexico, right? The challenge is how many of us have done the work to become a butterfly, but we're still trying to hang out with and speak caterpillar, right?
Mm.
And I'm not saying we can't speak to caterpillars and we can't encourage them in becoming a butterfly, because I believe that's the purpose of life, right? Like actually, so I got a revelation the other night, and I was sharing with you yesterday about John 11:11.
Oh
And
man.
it's a scripture where he literally is like telling the disciples, hey, Lazarus is asleep. And they're like, well, let's go wake him up. And he's like, he means that he's dead, but he tells him he's asleep. And I heard Holy Spirit telling me in that moment, that's who you are, James. You're here to wake up these people who are sleeping, who are basically dead in life, right? They're not
Yeah.
alive. And so this happens and this comes about. How does this all tie in? It happens and it comes about from self-awareness, right? And so then people will always ask me, well, what's the best way to increase my self-awareness? And I will always tell them, well, who knows you better than anybody? It's you, right? Now, I could tell you something about you, but if I do, I don't know you as well as you know you. And also, it's probably this little thing called an ego inside of the other person that's
Ooh.
going to get a little defensive and be like, well, I'm not sure if that's accurate or not. The best way to increase self-awareness is self-assessment and self-discovery, because we're actually receptive to that feedback more so than from anything else, right?
Man, I want you to go a little deeper. We talked about this, and so I want you to go a little bit deeper with regard to ego and humility in the context of intention and mechanism,
Yeah.
right? And what's interesting, so I'll come back to that because I want to bring Luke back in John 11 real quick. So after you shared that with me, I went and read it and I saw something I hadn't looked at before. Now I've actually taught through the whole Gospel of John. So like it's very intimate to me. And one of the things that I talked about when I taught it or taught on that whole gospel was in the situation with the resurrection. Notice that Jesus actually called Lazarus forth. And it tells us that when he came forth bound hand and feet. He still had on the grave clothes and the grave cloth. And what then Jesus said was, watch this. He said to them, this is what the writer said. He said to them, loose him and let him go. Now, what is that saying? Because this is coming back to intention and mechanism. What is that saying? It's saying that he actually creates the freedom from the things that hold us back. But this is something you were saying earlier about the thing that you were bound to, you get free from, and you're supposed to go help other people get free. He says to the people who had the power to take off the stuff that was holding them tight, the grave clothes, the cloth that caused them to not see and represent it, that there was no more light in him, but darkness, all of that. So we're supposed to help people to awaken once they've been awakened. More so, what happens is Jesus awakens and we help people to access that which is connected with the awakening. So talk to us about where you were sharing with me regarding intention and mechanisms and how that comes into everything you say, because I'll bet it's exciting.
Yeah, for sure. And just real quick, that was something else that had come to me in the last couple of years, is like that's what Jesus did, is he increased awareness in others, right? And that's what we call that awakening process. It's self-awareness, right? When we become aware, then we become hyper aware, we become hyper focused in that, right? So really what you're talking about here is what I call the victory formula.
Okay.
Okay. And that is that basically the way it works is that intention plus mechanism equals 100% victory in any endeavor that we are striving to achieve in life, or any end result or goal. And so the realization had come, we'll go ahead and shortcut the process for people and help inform them that it's all about our intention, and it has 0% to do with the mechanism. Is when we're committed to a specific outcome, then any mechanism that appears before us, we will be willing to explore to achieve that outcome.
Mm,
However, the challenge can be, as humans, we want to what? We want to control things. Why? Because of the ego. The ego never wants to be wrong. Like if we were to ask a room full of people right now, hey, who here likes to be wrong? Nobody's going to raise their hand probably.
right,
I'm a bit
right.
of a goofball. And one of the things, I don't do it as often as I should, however, because I forget a lot of times. But one of the things I strive to practice is when I'm in a room full of people and the speaker or somebody asks a question, I like to raise my hand and intentionally give the wrong answer. Well,
Hmm.
why? Why would you do that, James? Because I like to feel that feeling of that cringe of everybody looking at me, like judging me, being like, oh, that guy, man, he gave the wrong answer. Because I know who I am and I don't really
Uh,
care what anybody else thinks about me, but I
you know
like
who
to
James is?
experience humility so that my ego will be dissolved, right? Because that's what
Yeah.
ego. So back to your question in there and what you had teed up for me to talk about in here is that, so the challenge can be, a lot of us will start out with 100% intention. Let's say we're going to achieve a goal. Okay, well, what can happen is then a mechanism will appear in our pathway, but then because the ego wants to take control things and it wants to do what's capable in human carnal form, well, then it can get attached to a mechanism. And so the revelation I got the other day was is that any attachment to any mechanism is purely ego driven. Why? Because the ego wants to be right. That's what the ego wants more than anything, is
Mm,
to be right. And that's why also the biggest killer in life and business is what? Ego, right? How many CEOs, business owners, and executives are too caught up in their ego, not willing to be wrong, that they're completely oblivious to self-awareness in areas that they are lacking,
yeah. Yeah.
right? And so when
Mm,
we talk about that intention is spirit led, that's from our supernatural carnation in the flesh. But then any attachment to mechanism, that is 100% ego driven, right?
hmm.
Yeah. And so
Man,
if
so
go ahead.
you introduced something that's very unique in that. So I talk a lot about why work life balance is not achievable and cannot work. And one of the things that I communicate as it pertains to the work life piece is why they are essentially synonymous. So all of my parents are deceased, but my experience with my father passing unexpectedly and there being some criminal aspects related to it that are not able to be proven, like all those different elements. I remember standing in that hospital room with me and his body there. It was just us in this emergency room. And I remember looking at his body and seeing so much strength in his body and just like, man, this man wasn't ready to go. Right now, understand that there were some elements that influenced him going when he wasn't really expecting. But here's the thing that I absolutely know is that even if he wanted to work, he couldn't because he didn't have life, which means in order to work, there must be life, but there must be life deeper than the body. The body is really a mechanism,
Mm.
right? How many of us are really attached to our mechanism, which is why we are attached to ideas and perspectives that are not really serving us and progressing us forward, especially with regard to mastery of family life and business life, right? We can't achieve high performance in family life and business life when we are focused on what it looks like, what it feels like, what it tastes like, what it smells like, what we sounds like, and what it all of that, right? We've got to live as always talked about in Napoleon Hill's work, The Sixth Sense. Now, to be honest, I would actually argue that the sixth sense is actually the first sense. Meaning, if my father, and of course all the others who I love who have already passed on, but my father was different because I you see on the screen say the second, so that means there's a connection with my father in a certain way. My father being deceased showed me how there could be an absence of my identity physically. My dad's name is Leonard Earl Simpson II. I'm sorry, Leonard Earl Simpson. When I was first starting to write in school and write my name on papers, I wrote Leonard Simpson, and my mother said, "No, your name is Leonard Earl Simpson II. Your father's name is Leonard Earl Simpson." I'm like, okay, cool, right? But I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to put that second on there. Here's why I say that. When my father passed, I felt the absence of my father, though I was physically next to his body. So, where is our performance? Is it in our mechanism, or is it in our intention, which is at the level of the spirit nature that exists in us? So let me take you in this direction before we start wrapping it up, because I want us to get some more fire out for these folks. With that in mind, with regard to one, high performance, two, the awareness of self, right? And self not actually being this, but self actually being deep within us. Also, the awareness of the consciousness that we should have, the congruence in consciousness, right? But then also the very aspect of eliminating the focus on mechanism and the attachment to mechanism. Bring it all together for us in regard to how we can have high performance, pursuit, and achievement in family life and business life, not separate, but together.
Yeah, wonderful, wonderful question in here, and thought line that you're going through. And really just something that poked out to me was when you were talking about a moment ago, you said something to the effect of like you felt his absence, even though you were in his presence.
Yeah.
And really it's just how many fathers or mothers have children who literally, when they are present, their children feel their absence.
Yeah.
Right. So it's saying, hey, how self-aware are we of how, and not only our children, it could be in work too. We can have work children, if you will, like our subordinates at work, right? We have our work family and our home family. And so really where you were going with this and what was really coming through to me to share in this moment is, a lot of us, even when we become aware. So here, I want to share something with you. Most of us have more self-awareness than we realize, or we experience more of it. We just don't usually realize it's awareness of self. We experience it by seeing things about others that we think they need to improve or transform it. But when that happens, it's only happening because there's something within ourself. The old Carl Jung quote about how the thing that we see in others that we don't like is the thing that we don't like about ourselves.
Yeah.
The reason why is this, and this was a big upgrade for me in my life. I realized that I had an uncanny ability to spot areas where other people could improve. The thing was, though, then I was pouring out all this effort trying to help convince other people and show other people and tell other people where they needed to improve at. Right. Well, then what ends up happening is nobody ever met my expectation for them, because they never could, because it's impossible, because it wasn't their expectation. But then what ended up happening is I realized literally just about a year ago, and this is like, 30 something years into my life, I finally had this revelation. Anytime I see something in somebody else that I think they need to improve at, it's actually something within me trying to call out to me and increase my self-awareness of something I need to improve in. Right.
Yeah.
And what a model that I received through a revelation in this regard is, and where I'm going with all this and how it ties into family and life, family and business mastery, as well as high performance and self-awareness is, again, I sound maybe like a broken record to some people. How we do anything is how we do everything. And the best
Mm.
way to influence others is through action, not through words, right? So many of us, though, are focused on telling others where they need to improve on. And one of the best things that anybody could do to influence more people and have a following and have people be a leader and have people wanting to follow them is through our actions. And what do I mean specifically? Well, what I mean specifically is that, like, if there's something in our family life or our business life to be improved, rather than, for instance, like I had a conversation with my team in the last day about this, right? I see areas in other people that I think need to improve. And so rather than me going to them and being like, hey, I think you should get better at this, what do? I'm like, hey guys, I want to get better at this thing. This is an initiative for my own self-development and personal growth. Will you guys please hold me accountable? And what, like one of the things I was saying, I want to be better at releasing ego. I want to be better. I want to communicate more effectively, right? Like Larry's saying, lead through actions, not words. And so what then begins happening is in a, let's say, a business setting where I start walking around it. If I think other people need to communicate more effectively or need to release ego more often or need to do whatever else, well, what's going to get me the best result? If I come to you and I'm like, hey, Leo, you really need to get better at releasing your ego. Your ego is going to be like, wrong. You need to get better at your ego, James.
Yeah.
Right. Or am I going to get better by coming to you and being like, hey, you know what, Leo? I've realized my ego can be unchecked and out of control at times and really be a driving force of ineffective decision making in my life and business. I want to be better at releasing ego and not operating from it. Will you please help hold me accountable? And if you ever notice maybe that my ego is poking out or something seems like an ego response, let's find a way that you can communicate that to me in like a non, judgmental or something that I might interpret and get defensive with that my ego would want to. And I start modeling those new ways of releasing ego. Well, then what ends up happening over time is by default, you or whoever else is involved or anybody, they're going to say, man, James is really like getting good about releasing his ego. I mean, I see him make mistakes. I know he's a human. We all mess things up, but he's like really focused on this ego thing. And then at some point, the person's going to think, well, man, maybe is my ego? Could I get better at releasing my ego too? Man, I see this other person. They're getting, really putting a lot of effort into being a more effective communicator. Right?
Mm.
It's like, oh, well, rather than me going around the company being like, hey, you guys, everybody needs to communicate better. You guys all suck at communication. Well, I'm the CEO of the company. How we do anything is how we do everything. If the communication sucks, it starts with me.
Yeah.
Right? So my point in here is that so many of us want to tell others where we can improve, where they can improve. And especially to have influence at home in family life is role modeling the behavior. Role model the behavior that we want to see in others. Does that make sense?
So, absolutely, as well as it is pivotal and fundamental to achievement of mastery in family life and business life. And I'll tell you why. Because here's what I say. If your family life is crashing and burning, meaning you're dealing with this pervasive problem of family life crashing and burning, while business life is thriving and vibing, the truth is your business life thriving and vibing is an illusion.
Right.
Because it is a matter of time before your business life begins to crash and burn as well. Why? How we do anything is how we do everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then the other side of it is, I always say this is one of the reasons why people cannot see that work-life balance, it doesn't work. This is why crashing and burning happens in a lot of respects, is because people are operating from the thought process that I can go do great over here in business, whether I'm doing great in family life or not. But the truth is, what happens in family life is really designed to be the premier beginning of what happens in business life. Really, your identity is framed, it is focused, it is fine-tuned in family life for business life. To be honest, your kindness and your greatness And your magnificence is represented first and foremost when nobody sees but the people who see you in your raw. All right. And so the thing that really helped to propel me, because let me just tell you, I was crashing and burning, man, on the family side. And a lot of times, people talk about, well, you probably need some time away from your family in order to figure it out and, get yourself together. No, I got inundated with my family to where I had to be with them in some cases almost 24 hours a day on end, week by week. And it's where I begin to see exactly what you're talking about, that you've got to know that the leadership, because, Maxwell says it, everything rises and falls on leadership. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, right? So as a leader, are you a better leader by pointing out what's going on wrong? Are you a better leader? Or let me say, make sure it's clear, because that or and are can get together. Or are you a better leader by representing what ought to be present for the purpose of infusing it into the environment? Right? Are you doing that? And the truth of the matter is, what you're talking about is high performance ultimately comes from, at its core, a self-aware leader who models by example in the areas that are most private first and public second. Because if you're performing high, listen, I'm going to say this. Everybody really get this. If you're performing high in business life, but you're performing not even low in family life, which is crashing and burning while vibing and thriving, you are absolutely incongruent, simply because the performance is not designed to get you a trophy and a recognition of the highest level. It's really designed, listen carefully, it's really designed to be the reflection of what you're being rewarded with behind the scenes, right? In other words, and I'm going to set you up for something. In other words, what we've got to understand is the true reward comes in the private environment that produces the reproductive growth of high performance when you don't really get paid for it, so that you can actually see how to integrally get paid for it in the public environment where there are actually transactions to create transformations to people. Does that make sense? Talk about it.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And really, like, what's hitting in there is that oftentimes so many people, so many of us think that we're going to like figure it all out in the business realm, and then that's how somehow going to translate into family realm. Kind of like what backwards of the model you just said. Like, we think we're going to figure it out in public and be rewarded for it there first, and then it's going to somehow translate into private. Well, the private stuff is not in alignment. Let's just say cognitive dissonance, right? So basically conscious incongruence, if you will. And really, the other thing that was hitting to share in here is I love what you said about Maxwell's definition of leadership is influence. That's 100% it is. And the highest form of influence is action, right?
Yeah.
The most
Yeah.
effective form of influence. And here's what I want to say too is, this all comes from community. And that's really what we build at Awareness Elevation. And that's what we are experts in, is we are actually community facilitators, community developers, because people talk about, and it's like a Zig Ziglar quote, I think, is, you build the people and the people will build the business. Well, what builds people? Community is what builds people. And so why is this important? Well, when we get in a community of people who are in life and business mastery, then just like we all know, we become like the people we associate with most. Yeah. So is the way for us to improve at life and business mastery to just spend more time around the people who are influencing us the most right now, that are allowing us to not come up in our identity?
No.
Or is it to get into a community of people of high performance leadership, so that people are actually encouraging us and growing? Because the way that we define accountability here at Awareness Elevation is accountability is calling others up in their identity, not out on their behavior, right? So again, lead through action. And there's a saying that I picked up. I don't even know where I got this years ago, but it basically is like, speak of a person and so shall they become, right? And we all know, but for so many of us could lack awareness or be oblivious to the greatest power any of us have, our greatest personal power is our words, right? Because the creator created creation by speaking. Okay. And so oftentimes we can speak death into a situation unknowingly because we're speaking about it in a limiting capacity rather than speaking life and love into it. So, like, for instance, if I'm seeing I see something that resonates with me and somebody else. Oh, okay, I need to become a more effective communicator, or this person I think can be more effective at communicating. Okay, so that must mean that I need to become a better communicator, right? So then I turn it and I focus it on me, right? Yeah, Larry's saying calling people up on their ability, not out on their actions. And yeah, and their ability comes from their identity, right? Call people up in who they are. Speak to the person that they are, not the way they're behaving. Because of what even like when I'm seeing that person who I think can get better at communicating, and then I'm focusing on myself getting better at communication. I'm not doing that walking around saying, hey, this, speaking like whatever, saying things about this other person, even to myself, about them not communicating effectively. Right. So between you and I, if it was you and I'd be like, hey, Leo, I want to be better at communicating effectively. And all day long in my thoughts, and anytime I thought about the way Leo communicates, I'd be like, man, Leo is the smoothest communicator. He's the best communicator I've ever seen in my life. When I would see people, I'd be like, man, this guy, Leo, he gets better at communicating. Every single time I interact with this guy, I see him communicate. He gets better at communicating. He communicates more effectively. Well, then what ends up happening? A few months go by and Leo's a phenomenal communicator. Right? Versus what do most of us do? Oh, well, Leo sucks at communicating. Oh, man, if he could just get better at communicating. Well, why don't we just shut up and role model it first and foremost? And then why don't we direct that internal dialogue and external dialogue to be speaking into existence that which we want to come forth rather than casting a limitation on another human being, right? And so then I'll take that analogy into family life in our relationships, which then, as we know, how we do anything, how we do everything, plays into business life in our relationships, right? And like we talked about earlier, it's the children whose parents are present, but they feel their absence. It's the leaders who are physically present, but the team feels their absence.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
So one of the things I talk about in all of the content that I do is looking at people at the level of their potential, but more so looking at them at the level of their unlimited, unfulfilled potential.
Mm-hmm.
And what you're talking about is consistent with what is kind of emerging in my thought process of there is an absolutely unlimited, unfulfilled potential that exists in one, family life, two, business life, but three, family, business life mastery, right? I like to think, based on everything you've shared, that family, business life mastery is the elite level of high performance in all of life. If you master family life and business life, you ascend well beyond peak performance. And what I hear is work-life balance actually causes people to achieve peaks and valleys with the illusion that they are achieving mastery when they're not.
And they're being blinded by what? That 3-letter word, ego. Right?
Oh, man. And so the thing that I want to transition us out with is, how would I say it? This is the power of Mastermind. Okay. On the one hand, James presented to us. On the other hand, Leo presented, right? But the truth is, what happened was an ever emerging conversation, which really, I love this being day one. And what's cool is day two is going to have high performance as well. But y'all gonna have to come back for day two, morning mastermind, for that. Yes. But the thought process is this: high performance should be the goal, because high performance really is that ever present commitment to my unlimited, unfulfilled potential that needs to be unleashed. And the fact that I'm alive, it gives me the privilege, the honor, not only to unleash it, but to unleash it to be valuable to others. Now, I
Mhm.
want to I want to tap into something real quickly before we go, because I want you to share some final words closer to the end of this opportunity, and also share what opportunity or option you may have available for folks to benefit from.
Mm.
We love to talk about the Garden of Eden, right? A lot of people love. Matter of fact, there was a gospel song that was "Back to Eden," and one of the phrases in the lyrics was "Let's get back to Eden and live on top of the world," right? And so they're thinking about Eden as a physical place to a degree. Absolutely, it was, but that's really not why it was there in the beginning. It was really designed to be a representation of something, and that is this: ultimately, the garden was planted after man was created. I want you to see this. The garden was planted, but it was planted in the context of everything else in creation that had been created. And here it is. It was stated that the garden was planted, and there the man was put to work it and keep it. In other words, the garden is the representation of everyone's specific assignment, which has, in the context of your existence, unlimited potential for you to unleash your high performance and greatness. Would you agree? And if so, tell me why, and then transition that into those closing thoughts.
Yeah, 100%. And I'll make this reduced, simplified, and concise because we're coming to the top of the hour here, and I know all these CEOs and executives are busy business owners. So really quickly in there, as it applies to the demographic and the avatar that we speak a lot to here, it really has to do with that we were created with a purpose. And really, people at this level, they're actually what they're looking for is they're looking for results. And
Yeah.
so what we've done is we've partnered with Team 3L and Leo, and we're going to be providing a really awesome opportunity at the end of this for people to be able to come into a high performance leadership community so they can benefit from being around others and iron sharpening iron on a regular basis, because people in this place are usually in the place where they're trading money for results because they don't have the time to go through a long process or a big long framework. And so what this does is it helps people get in community and get results immediately from being in community. I want to be clear here though. Being in community is about sowing seeds, and we can
Mm,
never harvest when we sow. And so I always tell people, when you get into something and you get involved, don't be looking at what you can get from it. Be looking at how you
mm.
can serve and what you can sow into it with nothing in return, and you'll be blown away by what's brought back to you. So in closing, if I could just share one thing with people
Absolutely.
tonight, when you're getting ready to go to bed or sometime during the day when you're washing your hands, look in the mirror and ask yourself, who am I? Like, who am I really? Not what I do, not who the world tried to tell me to be. Who am I? And once
Yeah.
you understand and you have an idea of at least who you think you are or who you think you should be, I want you to take a moment and I want you to ask yourself a deep question. I want you to, if you can do this in the bathroom in a mirror, look deep into one of your eyes and just say, hey, James, you know who you are. What's one thing you need to stop doing right now today so that you be more of that person? And then go
Mm.
and do that. So take action on this stuff, guys. And I look forward to seeing more of you guys after this challenge and some of the programs we're going to have available for you guys. Leo, thank you so much. God
Man,
bless
thank you, James.
you. Love you, man.
Thank you, brother. Man, love you too. Listen, everybody, we're getting ready to close it down. I want you to take everything that James shared. Oh my goodness. This was just as I close. Join us today at 12:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'm going to be giving you some value talking about this perspective related to one of the issues and misleading beliefs that's causing family life crashing and burning, while people think that their business life is thriving and vibing. It is just getting going. The transformation and challenge is just beginning. So don't buy out. Come on and get in and get everything you got. And listen, we'll see you all later today as well as tomorrow morning. Y'all be expecting some fire